Sha'ban is Shurb, and it comes from the word Shurb, which means branch. So the ulama, they say one of the meanings and one of the reasons why Sha'ban is called Sha'ban and its root word is Shurb, branch, because it's a branch and it's a bridge between two blessed months, which is the month of Rajab, the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the month of Ramadan, the month of the Quran, the month of the Ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the great month of Ramadan. So this is one of the reasons why this month has been named Sha'ban. However, even though it points to this, it is often neglected. We often neglect this month because the month of Rajab, mashallah, we give it lots of attention. But the month of Ramadan also we give lots of special attention. But the month of Sha'ban often, most people, we neglect this because we think that it's not as significant as the 2 months that it is branching between. Right? But we should be aware of that. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, alerted us to this. And when he asked why he was fasting so much in Sha'ban, the Prophet ﷺ, he would fast much in Sha'ban, and he was asked, why do you fast so much in the month of Sha'ban, Ya Rasulullah? And he replied, it is a month which people neglect. Between Rajab and Ramadan, it is a month. So one reason is that the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us not to neglect the month. Because if we've already started to prepare for Ramadan and Rajab, there's no point in reversing the role now. Because then we're going to be in trouble. Then again we're going to have to start again in Ramadan and get our body and our spirit used to the things, right? Alhamdulillah, many of us have done extra ibadat in Rajab, so we should continue this. And the Prophet ﷺ said, this is why I fast so much in the month of Sha'ban, because one reason is because it is neglected. And another reason is, it is a month in which actions are raised to Rabbul Alameen, to the Lord of all the worlds, and I love for my actions to be raised while I am fasting. What does this mean, actions being raised or being presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We should also think about this, because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need our actions to be raised. He knows everything, yes? He knows what we're doing all the time. We can't say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs the actions to be presented, then He knows. No, subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is always aware. But there is a symbolic meaning behind actions being raised. And it's actually a rahmah and a mercy for the ummah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is symbolically taking our actions and they are being presented to Him at certain times in the day, certain times in the week, certain times in the month, certain times in the year. Why? So that it is, if we cannot do good all the time, if we cannot have istiqamah throughout the year, which is very difficult, except those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives tawfiq, then at least we can be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at those times. So it's a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of our actions to be displayed to Him. However, this is the hikmah behind it, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we are able to gain Allah's rida, Allah's pleasure at these times where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is symbolically causing our actions to be displayed, then we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive us for our heedlessness and ghafla at other times. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will overlook our faults at other times, and at least if we're conscious of Allah and we have taqwa of Allah and we're aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at these times where the actions are symbolically being displayed to Him, then we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept our amal and will get the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, there is a daily display, symbolic display after Fajr and after Asr. The Prophet ﷺ said there's a daily display. Our actions are raised and presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, symbolically speaking again, after Fajr and after Asr. Right? And this is why we see in the Sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ and in the blessed teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, he would be extra vigilant in those times. After Fajr, we know the Prophet ﷺ would sit remaining after the Jama'ah, and he would remember Allah, make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hatta al-ishraq, until ishraq, and then he would pray at least 2 rak'at of ishraq or more, and then he would depart. So this is showing us that our actions are being displayed. When our actions are being displayed symbolically, that beware of those times. After Asr, likewise, the Prophet ﷺ, before Maghrib and after Asr, he would spend that time in ibadah, in dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, there is a yearly display, a weekly display. Before that happens on Mondays and Thursdays. Every Monday and every Thursday, the Prophet ﷺ has also alluded to that. And he was asked, Ya Rasulullah, why do you fast on Mondays and Thursdays? And again, he said, Monday I was born on that day, this is why I fast, and Monday and Thursday also, our actions are raised to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I would love my actions to be raised when I'm in a state of fasting. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then there is a yearly display that happens in the month of Sha'ban. When is that? The Nisf Sha'ban. This is the month of Sha'ban, in the Laylatul Nisf min Sha'ban, the 15th night of Sha'ban, which will be coming not this Saturday night, but next Saturday night will be the night of 15th, and the Sunday will be the day. So likewise, the Prophet ﷺ encourages to fast, especially on the 15th, so that when that yearly display takes place, then we are, alhamdulillah, in a state of fasting, and hopefully in a state where Allah and His Prophet ﷺ are pleased with us, inshallah. Ameen. So one of the greatest works we can perform in this month of Sha'ban is, what we're talking about is fasting. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ loved to do in this month. For example, the Prophet ﷺ would fast on Mondays and Thursdays. He would also fast the 3 white days, Ayyam al-Bid, which are known as the 13th, 14th, 15th of the lunar month of the Islamic calendar. Also Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, al-Mu'mineen, she said about the Prophet ﷺ, I did not see him fasting in any month more than Sha'ban. And she also said the month which he loved to fast the most was Sha'ban. But obviously this does not include Ramadan. This is referring to the voluntary fasting outside of Ramadan. Ramadan is fard. Of course, this is the most important month of fasting. But outside of the fard fast, the voluntary nawafil fast, the Prophet ﷺ would love to do them in the month of Sha'ban. Alhamdulillah. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, in a response again about his fasting in Sha'ban, he was asked about this again, and he responded, in this month, those who are destined to die are recorded by the angel of death. This is another, the Prophet ﷺ is giving us hikmah, subhanAllah, and people say, and they question the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ. Look at the blessed knowledge of Rasulullah ﷺ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon him, that He has not bestowed upon other creation. He is telling us that this is the month which the angel of death records the names of those people who will die in the coming year. Will die. So this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, I would love for my name to be recorded when I'm fasting. So as a teaching for the ummah, that the fasting is something which is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bih. In another hadith, He says subhanahu wa ta'ala in hadith al-Qudsi, that fasting is for me, and I am the one who gives the reward for fasting. And there's a long hadith about the benefits of fasting, inshallah. We will cover those fadail and virtues of fasting in the weeks to come, and as we approach Ramadan. And to understand the fasting is, no one knows you're fasting except you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's an action which you cannot show off. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes show off, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes pride and arrogance. And this is why shaitan was rejected, because of his pride and his arrogance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises the darajat of those people who are humble. He raises the ranks of people who are humble and people who show tawadu, humility. And this is why certain things you can do, and you might be doing this with the wrong intention, that people know about you. You might perform so many rakat in the masjid. People might see that, this person, mashallah, is muttaqi, is pious. And in their heart might be a negative niyyah which is not right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept those a'mal. But fasting is such a thing that, who knows? A person is fasting or not, I cannot tell. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this because it's a hidden thing. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, As-sawmu li, the fasting is for me, wa ana ajzi bih, I will give you the reward of fasting. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not specified a reward for fasting. Subhanallah. He does not specify, right? Which in other things that He says, okay, you do this, you will get this hasana, you will do this, you will get this. But fasting is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you will find out on the Day of Judgment. When I enter you into Babul Rayyan, into that door of Jannah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specified that those gates for people who fast, for people from the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who fast, then when you enter that gate and whatever we receive, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is subhanallah, He is hiding that from us. He's hiding the reward. because it's a significant reward, and we will see on the Day of Judgment, inshallah, the blessing of them. One of the wisdoms behind the Prophet ﷺ fasting much in the month of Sha'ban is also mentioned by Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, al-Mu'mineen, who said that in Sha'ban, the Prophet ﷺ would make up any voluntary fast that he had missed during the year. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, not in the fard but nawafil, and he is showing us that if we miss any fast throughout the year, we should make them up in Sha'ban before the next Ramadan comes. And this is one of the hikmah. And at this time, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha would also accompany him sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and she would make up any fast that she had missed in Ramadan in the previous year. For example, sometimes we're traveling or musafirin, sometimes a woman is in a state where she cannot fast, so forth. Then they could make up those fasts, and for example, if you're sick, you're not able to fast, but then alhamdulillah Allah gives you shifa, then you can fast and make those. So the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us to, before the next Ramadan comes, make those fasts up that you have to make up, right? So that you're not going beyond, or you're not doubling up on those things, inshallah. And this also shows that if we miss any, even nawafil, if we're accustomed to performing sunnah acts or nawafil acts and we miss them, then we should also try to make them up. This is sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So you keep the consistency, which is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for us to be consistent in our ibadat. May Allah give us tawfiq. And some of the scholars, they say fasting in Sha'ban, they compare it to the salah. You know, when we pray our salah, we have some sunnah and nawafil before the fard and some after the fard. So Ramadan is like the fard fasting, yeah? And they say if you fast in Sha'ban, it's like the sunnah or the nawafil before. And fasting after the month of Ramadan is like the sunnah or nawafil after the salah. And what's the hikmah of that? The hikmah, we know from the Prophet ﷺ, he said that on the Day of Judgment, when our salah is being presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if there are any defects in our fard, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take the sunnah and make up for those defects. And take the nawafil and make up for those defects. This is the hikmah of performing the nawafil and the sunnah. We should not just perform the fard and run off. Unless there is a specific reason for us to do so, and it's a valid reason, this is a different story. But if we have the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has availed us the time, get used to performing the nawafil, because if we have any defects on the Day of Judgment in our fard, and we have deficiencies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, through His mercy subhanahu wa ta'ala, and through the teaching of His beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that He has informed us that He will allow, take up the nawafil and our extra ibadat, and He will cover our deficiencies in our fard, inshallah. This is one of the hikmah behind that. Subhanallah, this is a blessed month of Sha'ban, and we know that in this month the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Sha'ban is my month. Why did the Prophet ﷺ say Sha'ban is my month? Because the verse, the blessed verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna Allah وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما صلى الله عليه سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. This blessed verse, which is so dear to our hearts, was revealed in the month of Sha'ban. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed, and He showed the ummah the rank of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inna Allah, that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وملائكته, and His angels يصلون على النبي, they are always blessing the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They're always sending salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yusallun, continuity. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is continuously, even now, non-stop, is receiving the blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His angels. And then Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O believers, sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sallu alayhi, to send salawat upon Him, durood sharif, wa sallimu, and greet Him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, taslima, with a worthy greeting and a worthy salutation, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. This verse was revealed in the month of Sha'ban, and this is perhaps why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, this is my month, the month of Sha'ban. And this is why, including fasting, one other great thing that we should do is increase in salawat and salam ala Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Increase in durood sharif, increase in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His salawat and salam upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in this month, because this verse was revealed in this month. We should increase in this action. And we know that this is one of the greatest things that we can do. one of the greatest acts of ibadah that we can do is salawat and salam ala Rasulullah, durood sharif sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and salam upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Why? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Man salla alayhi salatan, sallallahu alayhi biha ashra." That the person who invokes one blessing upon me, one salat, one durood, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses that person 10 times.
Allah subhanahu. Nara takbir. Nara risalah. Ya Rasulullah.
And not only that, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala erases 10 of your sins. For one salawat. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises 10 darajat.
Allahu Akbar.
One salawat. And the ulama, they say, on the day of judgment, this is 10 blessings for one from Allah. On the day of judgment, if you were to take all your actions, not just your actions, the actions, the good deeds of all the creation, from the first creation to the last, and you were to put them on one side of the scale, and you were to put one blessing of Allah on one side, one blessing, then the one blessing of Allah would outweigh that. So look at the blessing that we're receiving, 10 for one, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar. So we should increase in salawat and salam upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And look at the great bishara, the great glad tiding that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given us. He said, the person closest to me on the day of judgment. Allahu Akbar. Who does not want to be close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We all want to be close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this world and in the next, especially in the next world, Ya Rabbil Alameen. When on that day, the day of judgment, where everybody will be saying, Nafsi, Nafsi, the only one saying that I am here for the creation is Rasulullah. He will be saying, Ana laha, Ana laha. Even the prophets, Anbiya wal Mursaleen, they will be saying, go to the other prophet. Go to the other prophet. And finally they will say, go to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And on that day, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will not reject you and me. He will say, Ana laha, Ana laha. I am for you, I am here for your shafa'ah. So this is the day the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who will be closest to me on the day of judgment is the one who bestows the most salawat upon me. The one who bestows the most durood and recites the most salawat and salam upon me. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be from them, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Also increase in the recitation of the Quran, so that in Ramadan it's easy for us to start now, so that we can get used to the listening and reciting the Quran in the month of Sha'ban, in the month of Ramadan, inshallah. 2 things, I'll finish with this, from the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that happened in the month of Sha'ban, from the seerah al-Nabawi. One was the splitting of the moon. SubhanAllah. So one of the miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he with his shahada finger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he split the moon in 2. The miracle of the Prophet. God showed this as a proof to the people who denied him. But still, for those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had covered their hearts, they still denied the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But for those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to guide through this miracle, they were guided, that they saw the splitting of the moon. And it is even said that people throughout the world, even in India for example, there was a king, I remember his name, he even saw the splitting of the moon from that place at that time. They witnessed this, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And another moment from the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, why he is known as Imam al-Qiblatain, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because before the Qibla was towards Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem. And we know if we go to Medina al-Munawwara, there's a Masjid al-Qiblatain. They have made a masjid there to mark where this event happened. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was in Salah, and he had the desire that the Qibla should be towards Bayt al-Haram, in Kaaba al-Sharifa, in Makkah al-Mukarramah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا. That we will turn towards the Qibla that you're pleased with, Ya Rasulullah. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew the desire of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because he's so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled the haja and the dua of his beloved in Salah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned 180 degrees towards Masjid al-Haram, and the Sahaba, they followed him. And from then on, the Qibla was towards Masjid al-Haram, by the Kaaba al-Sharifa in Makkah al-Mukarramah. This happened in Sha'ban as well. So this is why the Prophet ﷺ is known as Imam al-Qiblatain, the Imam of the 2 Qiblas, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our gathering here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we end with the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma barik lana fi Sha'ban wa ballighna Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us in the Rajab that has passed, in Sha'ban, and also allow us to reach the month of Ramadan in the best of states. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfill all our noble intentions and give shifa and afiyah to all those who are sick and suffering, Ya Rabbal Alameen. For those of us who have passed away from the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, may Allah raise their darajat, inshallah, and give them Jannatul Firdaus in the company of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله.